Media walks up to Coach Prime. Mr. Jeff Schnuttle says, Deion Sanders is at Browns practice today. He politely declined an interview. This is what Deion Sanders says. He says, I'm not doing media. He said, I'm just here to watch. Sanders and Browns head coach Todd Monken chatted on the field earlier in the day. Oh, no. Oh, no. What's going on, Sonya? Oh, no. I mean, if you let the Browns if you let the Browns media tell it, I mean, this was an earth-shattering, locker room breaking, world absolving type situation that we just saw happen. And I'm not sure if I believe that. I really don't know. So let's see what Todd Monken felt about the multiple Super Bowl winning, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest athletes of all time, whatever you call Deion Sanders, the Monk Man. How do you feel about it?
Picture this. Every single camera in Berea, Ohio stops moving at the exact same moment. Every reporter freezes. Every phone comes out. And not one of them is pointed at a player on the roster. Not one of them is pointed at the starting quarterback. Not one of them is pointed at any coaching drill happening on that field. Every single lens in that entire facility swings in one direction, toward a man who had not played a single snap of professional football in over 2 decades. And the entire Cleveland media operation went into full meltdown mode before that man even opened his mouth. And here is the part that nobody in that building was ready for. When Todd Monken found out who just walked through the gate, his reaction did not look anything like panic. It did not look like damage control. It did not look like a head coach calling an emergency staff meeting. His reaction looked like a kid who just met his favorite player, because that is exactly what happened. And that one moment exposed everything wrong with the way Cleveland media has been covering this team all offseason long. Drop a football emoji right now if you think Cleveland media completely overreacted to this. Because what actually went down in Berea on day 2 of training camp is a story worth telling the right way. And here at Gridiron Ground, that is exactly what we do.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Hearing from the new Browns practices or things like this.
They went out on that field yesterday. It felt like the team was focused, they were very intentional, and they were being coached. And that's something that I think we missed at the beginning of a lot of training camps, is because it's the first day. We're going to sing Kumbaya. We're going to get into the flow of things.
Syllabus day in college.
It's syllabus day in college.
A level of intensity, you thought?
There was a level of intensity. There was an attention to detail. The coaches were coaching harder. It just seemed like this was a very focused team coming out who went and practiced with intention, which is a really good sign for the coaching overall. We'll see where it goes from here. I'm not saying that they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I really like to see the way that Todd Monken came out in his first practice as a head coach in the NFL. It felt like a real NFL operation.
Well, Deion Sanders is a football. I don't know if y'all forgot about that. And I know some people feel like, hey, I'm disrespectful if I say Deion Sanders. I'm just saying that to hopefully get it through the people's heads who don't understand. Because sometimes y'all act like this is like Joe Schmo Sanders. This isn't just Shedeur Sanders' dad. I know for some reason, some of y'all, hey, to keep it real, some of y'all think Shedeur Sanders is a bigger star than Deion Sanders. Hey, I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe y'all love talking about Deion or Shedeur so much.
Day 2 of Cleveland Browns training camp. The team is barely through warm-ups. Players are getting their reps in. Coaches are running their drills, and the operation is moving exactly the way Todd Monken wants it to move. Focused, intentional, professional, and then it happens. Deion Sanders walks through the gates in Berea, Ohio, and you would have thought someone set off a fire alarm. The cameras moved so fast it was almost comical. Every beat reporter in that building immediately started doing what Cleveland media does best, trying to find the story, manufacturing the angle, building the narrative before a single thing had actually occurred. Jeff Schnuttle, who covers the Browns for Cleveland.com, walked straight up to Coach Prime with a microphone and asked if he would sit down for an interview. And Deion Sanders looked at that reporter, said 5 words and walked away. Those 5 words were this: "I am not doing media." That was it. That was the entire controversy. A man showed up to watch his son practice, declined a media request with complete professionalism and class, and went about his business. He watched from the sideline. He had a conversation with Todd Monken on the field. He observed Shedeur Sanders putting in work alongside wide receivers Tyler Wallace and Denzel Boston. And then when practice was done, everybody went home. No shouting, no drama, no locker room confrontation, no closed-door emergency meeting, nothing. Not a single thing happened that should have registered as news. But here is the thing about Cleveland media right now. They have been running a specific story about the Sanders family since before Shedeur was even drafted by this organization. The story goes like this: Shedeur is a distraction, Deion is a distraction. The whole family is too high profile, too outspoken, too much of everything for a professional football team to function around. That has been the narrative, and that narrative requires one very specific ingredient to survive. It requires something to actually go wrong. When Deion Sanders walked into Berea on day 2, the Cleveland media thought their moment had finally arrived. They thought they were about to get exactly the footage they needed to keep that narrative alive. Every camera angle of Coach Prime that you could possibly capture was captured that day. Deion sitting down, Deion standing up, Deion appearing to think about possibly considering the idea of walking somewhere. They had all of it on tape. And after going through every second of footage they collected, after reviewing every angle from every position on that field, the Cleveland media could not find one moment of actual controversy, because there was not one to find. Now here is what Gridiron Ground wants you to understand right now. This channel exists to give you the real story without the manufactured drama, without the clickbait angles that fall apart the moment you look at them closely. If you are new here and you have been finding your NFL analysis through channels that are more interested in creating panic than reporting facts, you need to hit that subscribe button right now and join the Gridiron Ground family. Because what we are about to break down for the rest of this video is the kind of honest, straightforward NFL analysis that you simply are not going to get from the Cleveland beat reporters, who were chasing a man around a practice field looking for a controversy that was never going to be there.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
The cameras kept rolling, the reporters kept looking, and Coach Prime just kept watching his son work. What happened next, though, is where this story takes a turn that nobody in that building was prepared for. Because Todd Monken's reaction to Deion Sanders being on that sideline said everything about the kind of head coach this team now has, and it said everything the Cleveland media did not want to hear. When Todd Monken was asked about Deion Sanders being present at Browns training camp, the man did not call a press conference. He did not release a statement through the team's PR department. He did not deflect the question or give a non-answer designed to make the story disappear. He just told the truth. He said he was a Deion Sanders fan. He said, "You kidding me?" like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Like the idea of being excited that one of the greatest football players who ever lived just walked into your building was not even a remotely controversial position to take. And that right there is the thing that broke the entire Cleveland media narrative in one sentence. Because what Todd Monken showed in that moment was not just enthusiasm. What he showed was security. A head coach who is genuinely confident in himself, confident in his staff, and confident in the culture he is building, does not feel threatened when an outside presence enters the building. He does not feel like his authority is being undermined when a Hall of Famer shows up to watch practice. He does not feel the need to establish dominance or send a message or prove to anyone that he is in control. He just is in control, and everybody in that building could feel it. Think about what a less secure coach does in that same situation. A less secure coach hears that Deion Sanders is on the property and immediately starts calculating. What does this look like? What are people going to say? Is this going to be seen as me losing control of my locker room? Is the media going to write that Shedeur's father is running my practice? That is what insecurity looks like in a head coaching position. And that kind of thinking creates exactly the locker room problems that the Cleveland media was predicting would happen. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, driven entirely by a head coach who is too worried about perception to just coach football. Todd Monken did not do any of that. He walked over to Deion Sanders, a man who has 2 Super Bowl rings, a Pro Football Hall of Fame bust, and 14 years of professional football experience, and he treated him like what he actually is, a legend of the game who deserves respect. They talked on the sideline. They connected. And then Monkin went right back to work, running his practice the exact same way he was running it before Coach Prime arrived. That is what a winning culture looks like from the inside. The head coach sets the temperature of the room. Whatever the head coach decides this moment is going to mean, that is what it means. And Monkin decided that Deion Sanders visiting practice meant one thing. A Hall of Famer came to watch his son work, and it was great to have him. Period. Full stop. No drama added because no drama was available to add. The players on that field felt that energy. Shedeur felt it. Tyler Wallace felt it. Denzel Boston felt it. When your head coach sees a legend walk in and responds with genuine excitement instead of thinly veiled panic, that tells your entire roster something critical. It tells them that this is a coach who loves football above everything else. And a team that believes their coach loves football above everything else is a team that is going to run through a wall for that coach when November and December games start to matter. But what does Deion Sanders actually being there tell us about what is happening behind the scenes with Shedeur's development and his standing on this roster? Because that part of the story is what the Cleveland media completely missed while they were busy calculating camera angles. Let's get something completely straight right now, because this point has been buried under so much noise that it needs to be said as clearly as possible. The distraction narrative surrounding Shedeur Sanders has never been about Shedeur Sanders. It has never been about anything he has actually done on a football field or in a locker room or in any professional setting since he arrived in Cleveland. It has always been about what certain people in the Cleveland media needed him to be in order for their story to make sense. Here is the argument they have been running. Shedeur comes with too much attention. His father is Coach Prime. The family has a massive social media presence. There are cameras and content and brand deals and all of this external activity that surrounds the Sanders family on a daily basis. And because all of that exists, the argument goes, it is going to be impossible for a normal NFL operation to function around it. That is the argument. That is what has been in print and on radio and on sports talk shows around Cleveland since before this kid played his first professional snap. Now let's look at what actually happened when that argument was put to the test for real on day 2 of training camp in Berea. Deion Sanders, the single biggest name associated with the entire Sanders distraction narrative, walked directly onto the practice field of the Cleveland Browns. He was there in person. He was physically present. The cameras were there. The reporters were there. Every single ingredient for the media circus that everyone had been predicting was right there on that field at the same time. And what happened? Practice happened. Football happened. Coaching happened. Shedeur Sanders ran his routes, took his reps, worked with his receivers, and did exactly what a young quarterback in a competition situation is supposed to do. Tyler Wallace and Denzel Boston stayed after practice to put in extra work. Taylor Green was out there competing. The entire operation continued exactly as Todd Monken had designed it to continue, because Monken built a culture that does not bend to outside noise, and that culture held up the first time it was genuinely tested. The distraction narrative requires a weak link. It requires either a head coach who gets rattled, or a locker room that fractures, or a player who loses focus. None of those things happened, not even close. And the reason none of those things happened is because the people predicting that chaos was inevitable never accounted for the possibility that Cleveland would hire a head coach who is actually good at his job. Here at Gridiron Ground, we have been on record saying since the Sanders draft process that the distraction argument was always going to collapse under the weight of its own assumptions. And if you have been watching this channel and paying attention to the analysis we have been putting out, you already knew this moment was coming. If you are new here and you are just now finding Gridiron Ground through this video, understand something.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
This channel has been ahead of this story from the beginning, and we are going to keep being ahead of it all season long. Hit that subscribe button. Turn the notification bell on, because when the next chapter of this story drops, you are going to want to be here the moment we upload it, not catching up 3 days later. The distraction myth did not just take a hit on day 2 of Browns training camp. It got completely dismantled in broad daylight, on camera, with every single Cleveland media outlet watching. And the most revealing part of everything that went down is not even what happened between Deion and Todd Monken. The most revealing part is what happens when you actually compare the coaching culture Monkin has built to what existed in that building before he arrived. There are 2 ways to run an NFL franchise. The first way is to manage perception. You spend your energy controlling what the outside world thinks about your organization. You worry about the narrative. You worry about what the beat reporters are writing. You make decisions based on how those decisions are going to look to the people watching from the outside rather than based on what is actually going to make your team better. That is one way to do it. The second way is to coach football. You build a culture inside your building that is so focused and so committed to the actual work that outside noise simply does not have room to enter. You make every decision based on one question, and that question is, does this make us better at football? If the answer is yes, you do it. If the answer is no, you do not. The media, the narratives, the trending topics, the social media conversations, none of it factors into the equation because none of it is football, and football is the only thing that matters. Kevin Stefanski operated in the first world. Todd Monken operates in the second. Now, before anyone comes into the comments saying this is just a hot take, understand that this observation is not based on one training camp visit or one press conference or one moment on a sideline in Berea. This is based on months of watching how both of these coaches respond to the exact same type of external pressure and arriving at 2 completely different places every single time. Under Stefanski, the Shedeur Sanders situation was already being framed as complicated before the ink was even dry on his draft selection. There were anonymous sources. There were whispers about locker room dynamics. There were stories about how the organization was navigating the unique challenges of having a player with Shedeur's profile on the roster. Every time the media came at Stefanski with an angle designed to create drama, the response from that camp either fed the story or failed to shut it down completely. Under Monkin, the entire dynamic is different, and the difference is not subtle. When reporters come at Monkin with bait, he does not bite. When the Cleveland media tried to build a crisis narrative out of Deion Sanders being on the sideline, Monkin responded by being genuinely thrilled that a Hall of Famer showed up to watch practice. That response did not feed any story. It killed every story. Because you cannot build a controversy around a head coach who is openly excited about greatness being in his building. The people who have been in Berea watching this team since OTAs have been saying consistently that the culture feels different. The intensity is different. The attention to detail is different. The coaches are coaching harder, and the players are being coached harder, and the whole operation has a focus and a professionalism that stands in sharp contrast to what was being described before Monkin arrived. That shift in culture is not an accident. It is the direct result of having a head coach who is locked in on the right things from the moment practice starts to the moment everyone goes home. And that shift in culture is also the reason that Deion Sanders walking onto the practice field of the Cleveland Browns on day 2 of training camp was not a crisis. It was just a Hall of Famer watching his son work in an environment that he clearly trusts. And the trust that Coach Prime has in this organization is worth unpacking in its own right, because it tells us something very specific about what is actually happening inside that building right now. Deion Sanders does not go places where he does not feel respected. That is not speculation. That is not a hot take. That is just an observable pattern in how Coach Prime operates, and it is a pattern that has been consistent throughout his entire career in both playing and coaching. When Deion invests his presence somewhere, it is because he has evaluated the situation and determined that the people running that situation are worth his time and his investment. So when Coach Prime drove to Berea on day 2 of Cleveland Browns training camp and spent time on the sideline talking to Todd Monken, that was not a casual decision. That was a deliberate act of trust. It was Deion Sanders looking at the environment that this coaching staff and this front office have built around his son and deciding that the environment was worth showing up for. And if you know anything about how selective Coach Prime is with his presence, you understand exactly how significant that is. Go back to the draft process. When Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns front office were putting together their case for why they should be the team to develop Shedeur Sanders, Deion was paying attention. He was watching how this organization operated. He was evaluating the people who were going to be responsible for his son's professional development. And somewhere in that evaluation, Deion Sanders arrived at a conclusion. He gave his stamp of approval to Todd Monken. He gave his stamp of approval to Andrew Berry. He told the world through his actions and through his willingness to be connected to this organization that he trusted the people running it. That stamp does not come free. Nobody calls up Deion Sanders and gets a ringing endorsement just because they ask nicely. That kind of credibility and that kind of trust is earned through genuine competence, through demonstrated respect, and through a clear and consistent commitment to doing right by the people in your care. The Cleveland Browns earned that trust. Todd Monken earned that trust. And on day 2 of training camp, Coach Prime showed up in person to demonstrate that the trust is still there and still real. Now think about what this means for Shedeur specifically, because there is a version of this situation where Deion is worried. There is a version where Coach Prime is making calls and sending signals that something about this organization does not feel right, that the environment is not what was promised, that the people who said they believed in his son are not actually showing that belief through their actions. That version of this story would look completely different from what we saw in Berea on day 2. That version does not include Deion Sanders calmly watching practice from the sideline and having a genuine conversation with the head coach on the field. What we saw instead was a father who is comfortable, a father who looked at the practice field where his son is working and saw an organization moving in the right direction, an organization with a head coach who loves football, a front office that is committed to building something real, and a locker room culture that is shifting day by day into something that a young quarterback with Shedeur's talent can genuinely thrive inside of.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
And the Cleveland media, for all their cameras and all their angles and all their desperate searching for a controversy, somehow missed the most important image of the entire day. Coach Prime standing on that sideline looking like a man who is at peace with where his son ended up. But while everyone was focused on the Sanders family storyline, something else was happening on that practice field that deserves its own conversation entirely. Because the reports coming out of Berea about what training camp actually looks like under Todd Monken paint a picture that is dramatically different from anything this franchise has produced in recent memory. While every camera in Berea was pointed at Deion Sanders either sitting or standing or thinking about walking somewhere, something genuinely interesting was happening about 40 yards away on the actual practice field. And almost nobody in the Cleveland media gave it the attention it deserved because they were too busy manufacturing a crisis that was never going to materialize. The reports coming out of Berea from people who were actually watching the football being played describe a team that looks fundamentally different from what this franchise has produced in years. The word that keeps coming up over and over from multiple independent observers who have no reason to coordinate their messaging is intentional. This team is practicing with intention. Every rep has a purpose. Every drill has a focus. The coaches are not easing into training camp like it is the first week of a college semester. They are coaching hard from the jump, establishing expectations immediately, and making it absolutely clear that the standard in this building under Todd Monken is different from what the standard used to be. That is not a small thing. In fact, that might be the most important thing that happened on day 2 of Browns training camp, and it got buried under 100 camera angles of a man declining a media request. Think about what it means for a team's long-term culture when the very first practices of training camp are described as focused, intentional, and run with a level of intensity that stands out to everyone watching. It means the players know from day one what this head coach expects. It means there is no ambiguity about the standard. It means the veterans on this roster, the players who have been through multiple coaching regimes and multiple different versions of what Browns football is supposed to look like, are walking into practice every day and feeling a clarity and a purpose that might be new to some of them. And for a young quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, who is coming into his first professional training camp after spending his entire college career in the specific system that his father built at Colorado, that kind of intentional, structured, high-standard environment is exactly what his development requires. The worst thing that could happen to a rookie quarterback with Shedeur's talent and Shedeur's profile is landing in a coaching environment that is disorganized, reactive, or easily thrown off course by outside noise. The best thing that could happen to him is exactly what appears to be happening in Berea right now. The players who were out there after practice putting in extra work were not there because someone told them they had to be. They were there because the culture that Monkin has built makes extra work feel like the natural extension of what happened during practice, not like a separate thing you drag yourself through before going home. Tyler Wallace was there. Denzel Boston was there. Taylor Green was there. Shadeur was there. These are players at different positions with different roles and different career situations, all making the same choice to stay after and keep working. That does not happen by accident. That happens because a head coach created an environment where that kind of commitment feels normal and expected and worth showing up for. The Cleveland media wanted to tell you a story about drama and distraction and chaos. The actual story happening on that practice field in Berea is about a team that is quietly, seriously, and with real intention building towards something that this franchise has not had in a very long time. And Shedeur Sanders is not on the outside of that story looking in. He is right in the middle of it, exactly where he needs to be for his development to go where his talent says it can go. Here is a question that nobody in the Cleveland media wants to answer honestly right now. If Shedeur Sanders is such an overwhelming distraction, if his presence is so destabilizing, if the Sanders family involvement is so disruptive to the normal functioning of an NFL organization, then why does every piece of first-hand evidence coming out of Berea point in the exact opposite direction? Why are the players putting in extra work? Why is the head coach describing the culture in positive terms? Why did Deion Sanders show up on day 2 and spend time on the sideline talking to Monkin without a single moment of visible tension or conflict? Why are the reporters who are actually on the ground in Berea, the ones who attended every OTA and are now watching every training camp practice, describing a team that feels dramatically different and dramatically better than what was there before Shedeur arrived? None of that adds up if the distraction narrative is accurate. None of it. And the reason it does not add up is because the distraction narrative was never built on actual evidence. It was built on assumptions. It was built on the idea that a player with Shedeur's profile and Shedeur's family connections could not possibly fit into a professional football environment without causing problems. And that assumption has been wrong at every single stage of this process. Let's be real about what Shedeur's actual situation looks like right now as we move deeper into training camp. He is in a quarterback competition, which is exactly where a rookie quarterback coming into a new system should be. He is being coached by a staff that is clearly dialed in and clearly committed to developing their players properly. He has a relationship with his receivers that goes back far enough to give him a genuine comfort level within the offense. He has his father's support and his father's presence in a way that is constructive and professional, rather than invasive or disruptive. And he is working in a building where the head coach has demonstrated on day one of camp that nothing from the outside world is going to change the standard or the focus of what is happening on that practice field. That is a strong position for a rookie quarterback to be in. That is actually a really strong position. And the people who have been predicting failure and chaos and organizational meltdown are going to spend this entire season watching their predictions fail to materialize one by one. Which brings us to something important that needs to be said about the community that has been following this story here at Gridiron Ground. You guys who have been here from the beginning of the Sanders coverage on this channel, you saw this coming. You were in the comments calling this months ago when everyone else was buying into the panic. You understood that the distraction narrative was built on assumptions, and that those assumptions were going to get dismantled the moment Shedeur actually got on a professional practice field and showed what he could do in an environment built by a competent head coach. Gridiron Ground got this right because this channel does not chase narratives. It follows the evidence, and the evidence has consistently pointed toward a young quarterback in a better situation than the critics ever wanted to acknowledge. If you have not subscribed to Gridiron Ground yet and you are watching this video, here is the honest truth. The Shedeur Sanders story is just getting started. There are preseason games coming. There are depth chart decisions coming. There are moments in this season that are going to be huge, that are going to shift the entire conversation around this kid and around this franchise. And when those moments happen, this channel is going to be here with the real analysis, not the manufactured panic, not the clickbait crisis coverage, but the honest, evidence-based breakdown that you actually deserve. Subscribe to Gridiron Ground right now and be here for every single chapter of this story as it unfolds. Because the critics have been wrong about Shedeur at every turn, and they are about to run out of arguments entirely. There is a moment in every media narrative cycle when the people pushing a particular story start to realize that the story is not going to land the way they planned. You can see it happen in real time if you know what to look for. The language gets slightly more cautious. The predictions get slightly more hedged. The angles start to shift from definitive claims to vague concerns about things that might happen down the road. The goalpost moves from this is already a problem to, well, we will see if this becomes a problem eventually. The Cleveland media narrative around Shedeur Sanders and the Sanders family has been moving in exactly that direction since training camp opened in Berea. And Deion Sanders walking onto that practice field on day 2 and producing absolutely zero controversy has accelerated that movement significantly. Think about the timeline of predictions that have been made about this situation. Before the draft, the prediction was that no serious NFL organization would draft Shedeur because the family attention was too overwhelming for a professional locker room to handle. The Browns drafted him. After the draft, the prediction was that the locker room was going to fracture almost immediately under the weight of the Sanders family presence and the media attention that comes with it. The locker room did not fracture. During OTAs, the prediction was that the coaching staff was going to struggle to maintain normal operations with all of the outside interest in Shedeur's development. The coaching staff ran one of the most praised sets of OTAs that this franchise has had in years. And now, in the first 2 days of training camp, the prediction was that Deion Sanders showing up was going to confirm every fear about this situation becoming unmanageable. Deion showed up, he watched practice, he talked to the head coach, he went home. The prediction failed again. Every single checkpoint in this story has produced the same result. The people predicting chaos have been wrong. The people predicting organizational dysfunction have been wrong. The people predicting that Todd Monken would not be able to handle the unique pressures that come with having Shedeur Sanders on his roster have been spectacularly, demonstrably, on the record wrong. And with every failure of their predictions, the argument that was supposed to be so overwhelming and so obvious gets a little bit weaker. Now here is where this gets genuinely interesting as we move forward into the rest of training camp and into the preseason. The critics are not going to disappear. They are going to shift their argument to the next thing, because that is how this works. When the locker room does not explode, they will say, well, let us see how he performs in preseason games. When the preseason performances are solid, they will say, well, let us see when the regular season pressure is real. The argument will keep moving because the people making it are not interested in being accurate. They are interested in maintaining a narrative that generates attention. What Gridiron Ground is going to keep doing throughout this entire season is exactly what we have been doing. Following the evidence, calling out the manufactured drama for what it is, giving you the real analysis on what is actually happening with this team, with this quarterback, and with the coaching staff that is building something genuinely new in Berea. Because the evidence right now, on day 2 of training camp in Cleveland, says that Shedeur Sanders is in a strong environment with a competent head coach who is not rattled by outside noise, a roster that is competing with genuine focus and intention, and a father whose presence on that sideline communicated one thing louder than any interview ever could: that this situation, this team, this moment is worth believing in. The haters came to Berea looking for ammunition and left with nothing but camera footage of a Hall of Famer watching his son practice. That is not the story they wanted to tell, but it is the story that actually happened. So here is where we land after everything we just broke down. Deion Sanders walked into the Cleveland Browns training camp facility on day 2, and instead of the organizational meltdown that the Cleveland media had been quietly hoping for, what the world got instead was a Hall of Famer watching his son work in an environment built by a head coach who is genuinely good at his job. Todd Monken did not blink. The locker room did not crack. The practice did not skip a beat. And every single prediction built on the idea that this situation was too big and too loud, and too much for a professional football team to handle took another direct hit that it is not going to recover from easily. The real story in Berea right now is a coaching culture that is shifting in real time, a young quarterback developing inside an environment that is built for his growth, and a franchise that is slowly but clearly becoming something different from what it has been. That is the story, and it is just getting started. Here at Gridiron Ground, we are going to be here for every chapter. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below telling us what you think Shedeur's first preseason game looks like, and we will see you in the next one.
Deion Sanders is a football. I don't know if y'all forgot about that. And I know some people feel like, hey, I'm disrespectful if I say Deion Sanders. I'm just saying that to hopefully get it through the people's heads who don't understand. Because sometimes y'all act like this is like Joe Schmo Sanders. This isn't just Shedeur Sanders' dad. I know for some reason, some of y'all, hey, to keep it real, some of y'all think Shedeur Sanders is a bigger star than Deion Sanders. Hey, I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe y'all love talking about Shedeur so much that all y'all think Deion Sanders is a distraction. No, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. If you're in the Browns media, yeah, believe it or not, people who are good at football, who respect football players, respect one of the greatest football players of all time. I'm sorry that only in Berea, Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, is that a hot take. is the idea of Shedeur coming. Because remember, the first time he came, David Njoku was fanned out. Oh my God, it's Deion Sanders. Titus Howard, what's going on? And then not